Have you ever wondered why your neighbor who earned half your salary throughout their career seems to be living a more comfortable retirement than you are? What if I told you that the very strategy you've been taught your entire life, the one about keeping your money safe in cash and savings accounts, might be silently destroying your retirement dreams right now? Here's something that keeps me up at night. I've watched countless successful professionals, people who did everything right according to conventional wisdom, face a brutal awakening in their retirement years. Doctors, lawyers, executives who diligently saved for decades suddenly find themselves anxious about money, despite having what looks like substantial nest eggs on paper. The problem isn't that they didn't save enough. The problem is what they're doing with that money after 60. The financial establishment has been selling you a comfortable lie, and it's costing retirees their peace of mind. They've convinced you that cash is king, that safety means keeping your money liquid in savings accounts, money markets, and certificates of deposit. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to tell you. After 60, cash isn't your friend. It's a silent wealth destroyer that erodes your purchasing power month after month, year after year. Has this ever happened to you? You've accumulated what seems like a reasonable amount of savings, maybe $500,000, perhaps even $1 million or more. You feel like you've done the responsible thing by keeping it accessible and safe. Then you start doing the math on your retirement expenses, factoring in healthcare, inflation, and the lifestyle you've worked decades to afford, and suddenly that number doesn't feel so comfortable anymore. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's what most financial advisors won't tell you because it contradicts everything they've been trained to say. The rules change dramatically after 60. The playbook that worked brilliantly in your 30s, 40s, and even 50s becomes dangerously obsolete once you cross that threshold. Time, which used to be your greatest ally in building wealth, suddenly transforms into something far more ambiguous. You don't have decades anymore to recover from mistakes or ride out market cycles. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover challenges everything you thought you knew about retirement security. This isn't about taking reckless risks or chasing get-rich-quick schemes. It's about understanding a fundamental shift that needs to happen in how you position your wealth when your earning years wind down and your spending years ramp up. If you found value in this conversation and want to continue exploring financial wisdom that actually makes sense for your retirement years, I'd love to have you as part of this community. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the practical insights we share about protecting and growing your wealth after 60. This isn't about hype or get-rich-quick schemes. It's about real strategies that work for real people navigating their golden years. The financial industry profits from your fear and your confusion. They've built an entire ecosystem around the idea that cash equals safety, that holding money in banks and treasury bills is the prudent path for retirees. But what if that's exactly backwards? What if the real threat to your retirement isn't market volatility, but the guaranteed erosion of your purchasing power through inflation and opportunity cost? Think about what happened during the 2008 financial crisis or the COVID market crash in 2020. If you were in your 30s or 40s during those downturns, you probably felt the pain, watched your portfolio shrink, maybe even lost sleep over it. But here's the critical difference. You had time. You could keep working, keep contributing, ride out the storm, and eventually watch your accounts recover and even grow beyond where they were before. That recovery window was your safety net, your psychological cushion that allowed you to take calculated risks and bounce back from setbacks. But after 60, that window slams shut with a finality that most people don't fully grasp until it's too late. A market correction that happens when you're 62 or 67 doesn't just sting, it can fundamentally rewrite your entire retirement story. You can't simply work a few more years to make up the difference. Your earning power isn't what it used to be. And even if you wanted to return to the workforce, the opportunities and income levels you once enjoyed may no longer be available. This is the hidden truth behind the scenes of retirement planning that the financial industry glosses over with optimistic projections and historical average returns. The transformation that needs to happen in your mindset is profound. You're no longer playing offense, trying to accumulate as much wealth as possible. You've shifted into a completely different game where defense becomes paramount. It's like the difference between a football team with a commanding lead in the fourth quarter versus one that's still trying to score in the first half. The strategies are fundamentally different because the stakes and the timeline have changed. Your portfolio can't afford to take the same risks it once did, yet holding everything in cash creates a different kind of catastrophe, a slow, inevitable erosion of your purchasing power that's just as destructive, only quieter. I've witnessed this journey firsthand with countless clients who come to me after making decisions based on what worked for their parents or what their banker recommended. The impact of those outdated strategies often doesn't reveal itself immediately. It's insidious, creeping up year after year as inflation chips away at their cash reserves while their friends who positioned their wealth differently maintain their lifestyle and even grow their income. The revelation usually hits around year 5 or 7 of retirement when they realize their spending power has diminished significantly despite not changing their habits. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation because understanding why the rules change is just as important as knowing that they do change. The financial landscape you're navigating after 60 bears little resemblance to the one you mastered during your accumulation years, and the sooner you embrace this reality, the better positioned you'll be to actually enjoy the retirement you've worked so hard to achieve. If you've experienced that moment of realization that your old financial strategies might not work anymore, write "mindset shift" in the comments below. The pivot point in your financial life after 60 isn't just a minor adjustment. It's a complete strategic reversal that most people resist because it feels counterintuitive. For decades, you've been conditioned to think about growing your wealth, maximizing returns, and taking advantage of compound interest over time. That mindset served you brilliantly during your earning years, but clinging to it after 60 is like trying to win a chess match using checkers strategies. The board looks similar, but you're playing an entirely different game now. Here's the hidden truth that transformed how I approach retirement planning. Your wealth after 60 isn't meant to be maximized. It's meant to be fortified and strategically deployed. Think of it less like a garden you're trying to expand and more like a fortress you're designed to defend while still being able to live comfortably within its walls. This isn't about becoming paranoid or overly conservative. It's about recognizing that a single mistake, one ill-timed decision during a market correction, can undo decades of disciplined saving with absolutely no opportunity to rebuild what you've lost. I've seen this devastation play out in heartbreaking ways. A couple who retired in 2007 with what seemed like plenty of money, only to watch the 2008 crisis slash their portfolio value by 40% right when they needed to start drawing income. They never fully recovered because they were forced to sell assets at depressed prices to cover living expenses, locking in losses that a younger investor could have simply waited out. The impact of that single year rippled through the next 15 years of their retirement, forcing lifestyle compromises they never imagined they'd have to make. But there's a method that changes this entire equation, a way to structure your wealth that virtually bulletproofs it against the kind of catastrophic scenarios that haunt traditional retirement portfolios. This approach treats your money not as a score to keep improving, but as a precious resource that needs multiple layers of protection while still generating the income you need to live the life you've envisioned. It's about building a financial architecture that can withstand storms rather than betting everything on permanent sunshine. The revolution happening behind the scenes in sophisticated retirement planning circles involves a fundamental reimagining of what success looks like. Success isn't about having the highest returns or the most impressive portfolio balance. It's about creating unshakable income streams, protecting against downside risk, and positioning your assets so that market volatility becomes someone else's problem, not yours. This journey from growth-focused thinking to preservation-focused strategy represents perhaps the most valuable transformation you can make in your entire financial life. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this actually looks like in practice, because understanding the philosophy is one thing, implementing it in a way that works for your specific situation is where the real power lies. If this resonates with you and you're ready to think differently about your retirement money, type defense mode in the comments. The psychological shift that happens when you cross into your 60s is fascinating, and most people don't even realize it's occurring. When you're younger, you're constantly bombarded with stories about opportunities you might be missing. Your colleague made a fortune on some tech stock. Your cousin bought Bitcoin at the right time. Your friend's real estate investment tripled in value. This fear of missing out drives so much of the investment behavior we see in younger people. And honestly, when you have time on your side, taking some calculated shots isn't necessarily wrong. But something profound changes after 60, and I've watched this transformation happen with almost every client I work with. The anxiety stops being about what you might miss and starts being about what you could lose. I call this FOBO, fear of blowing out, and it's actually a healthy, rational response to your new financial reality. Your wealth can be completely decimated by one bad decision, one overly aggressive position, one moment of following the crowd into something you don't fully understand. And here's the brutal part. There's no do-over button. No second act where you rebuild from scratch. The revelation that comes with embracing this mindset is incredibly liberating. You stop feeling that nagging anxiety when you hear about the latest cryptocurrency rally or when someone at a dinner party mentions the returns they're getting on some exotic investment strategy. Instead, you develop a clarity about what genuinely matters for your situation. Durability becomes more attractive than growth. Reliability trumps excitement. Capital preservation starts to look a lot more appealing than capital appreciation. This isn't about becoming timid or scared. It's about recognizing that the game has different rules and different scorekeeping now. The impact of this shift extends into every financial decision you make. When evaluating any opportunity, whether it's an investment, a major purchase, or even how you structure your income streams, you start asking a completely different question. Instead of focusing on the best-case scenario and how much you could potentially gain, you flip the equation and ask, what's the worst that could happen here? What if this goes sideways? What if the market turns? What if the company fails or the strategy doesn't work? Can I afford that outcome? Will I still be okay? This worst-case thinking isn't pessimism. It's protection. It's the hidden strategy behind the scenes of every successful retirement I've witnessed. The people who thrive in their later years aren't the ones who took the biggest swings and got lucky. They're the ones who protected their downside so effectively that even when things went wrong in the broader economy, their lifestyle remained untouched. The journey from chasing returns to protecting capital represents one of the most critical transitions you'll ever make. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this means for the specific choices you make with your cash, because understanding the philosophy is valuable, but knowing exactly what to do with your money sitting in banks right now is where the rubber meets the road. If you've started thinking more about protecting what you have rather than chasing what you don't, write FOBO mindset in the comments. There's something almost countercultural about what I'm going to tell you next, and it goes against everything you see splashed across financial headlines and social media. We're living in an age that worships innovation, disruption, and excitement. The financial media makes its money by getting you to click, watch, and engage, which means they're constantly promoting the latest trend, the hottest stock, the revolutionary investment strategy that promises to change everything. Traditional investments like dividend-paying blue-chip stocks or municipal bonds get dismissed as relics from your grandfather's era, too boring and outdated for the modern investor. But here's the paradox that reveals itself once you've worked with enough retirees to see the pattern. The less thrilling your investment approach becomes after 60, the more thrilling your actual retirement will be. Think about that for a moment. The people I know who are genuinely enjoying their retirement years, traveling when they want, supporting their grandchildren, pursuing hobbies without financial stress. They're not the ones with portfolios full of speculative plays and exciting growth stocks. They're the ones with boring, predictable income streams from dividend stocks that have paid consistently for decades, municipal bonds throwing off tax-free interest, maybe some rental properties generating monthly cash flow. These investments don't make for exciting dinner party conversations. Nobody's going to be impressed when you talk about your portfolio of utility companies and consumer staples. But you know what these boring investments provide? The ability to sleep at night, the confidence that your income will be there next month and the month after that, regardless of what headlines are screaming about market volatility or economic uncertainty. That foundation of security creates a kind of freedom that no amount of exciting returns can match, especially when those exciting returns come with the stomach-churning anxiety of wondering if it's all about to disappear. The transformation that happens when you embrace boring is deeply psychological, and honestly, many of my clients describe it as one of the most liberating experiences of their financial lives. For decades, you've been measuring yourself against benchmarks, comparing your returns to indexes, feeling that constant pressure to outperform, to beat the market, to find the next big opportunity before everyone else does. It's exhausting. The mental energy consumed by this perpetual performance anxiety is immense, and most people don't realize how much it's costing them until they finally let it go. The revelation comes when you recognize that you're no longer in the wealth accumulation game where beating the market by a few percentage points actually matters. You've already accumulated what you're going to accumulate. The impact of trying to squeeze out an extra 2 or 3% of return pales in comparison to the catastrophic consequences of losing 20 or 30% at exactly the wrong time. Behind the scenes of every peaceful retirement is a decision to stop competing and start protecting. Now, I want to go even deeper into the specific threats that cash holders face, because understanding why boring investments work requires understanding what's actually happening to your money when it sits in savings accounts and money markets. If you felt that sense of relief when you stopped trying to beat the market, type peace over performance in the comments. When I look back at the financial wreckage of destroyed retirement portfolios over the past few decades, there's a pattern so consistent it's almost eerie. It's not random bad luck or unpredictable market crashes that wipe people out. It's the same 3 toxic ingredients showing up again and again, often in combination, creating a perfect storm that obliterates decades of careful wealth, building in shockingly short time frames. These elements are leverage, excessive complexity, and speculative positions, and understanding why they're so dangerous after 60 could be the difference between a comfortable retirement and a financial disaster. Let's talk about leverage first, because this is where I see smart, successful people make catastrophic mistakes. The allure is obvious. Borrowed money can amplify your returns when things go right. You invest 100,000 of your own money plus 100,000 borrowed, and if the investment goes up 20%, you've made 40,000 instead of 20,000. On paper, it looks like financial engineering genius. But here's the hidden truth that destroys portfolios. Leverage is a double-edged sword that cuts much deeper on the downside than it rewards on the upside. When markets turn, and they always eventually turn, that same leverage that enhanced your gains now ruthlessly magnifies your losses. A 10 or 15% market correction that would be uncomfortable but manageable for an unlevered portfolio becomes an extinction-level event when debt is involved. You're not just losing your own money, you're losing borrowed money that still needs to be repaid, often at the worst possible moment when asset values are depressed. The impact of this dynamic after 60 is particularly brutal because you don't have the income stream or time horizon to recover from a leveraged catastrophe. Then there's complexity, which is perhaps the most insidious of the three because it often disguises itself as sophistication. I've watched retirees get sold structured products, exotic derivatives, complex annuities with pages of fine print, and investment strategies so convoluted that even the people selling them can't fully explain how they work. The revelation here is profound. Complexity in financial instruments almost never exists to benefit you. It exists to obscure risk and justify higher fees. There's a simple test I use with every investment opportunity. If you can't explain it clearly to a reasonably intelligent teenager, it probably doesn't belong anywhere near your retirement portfolio. Behind the scenes of every financial product wrapped in layers of complexity is usually a much simpler truth. Someone is making money off your confusion. The transformation in your decision-making happens when you realize that simplicity isn't unsophisticated. It's protective. The clearer you can see how an investment works, what can go wrong, and how you'll get your money back, the better equipped you are to make sound decisions. Now, I want to go even deeper into how these toxic ingredients interact with the specific challenge of holding too much cash. Because the solution isn't just avoiding danger, it's strategically positioning your wealth to work for you without exposing you to these catastrophic risks. If you've ever felt confused by a financial product that seemed too complicated to understand, write "simplicity wins" in the comments. There's a psychological phenomenon that destroys more retirement portfolios than market crashes, bad advice, or even poor investment selection. And it's something most people never see coming because it feels so natural, so human. Charlie Munger, one of the greatest investors of our time, identified envy as the dumbest of the 7 deadly sins. And when you think about it, his observation is brilliant. Most of the traditional sins at least offer some kind of immediate gratification or pleasure, however fleeting. But envy, it delivers absolutely nothing except misery, anxiety, and terrible decision-making, yet it remains one of the most powerful forces influencing financial choices, especially after 60. Here's how this plays out in real life, and I've watched this transformation destroy carefully planned retirements more times than I can count. You've spent years building a strategy that makes sense for your specific situation, your risk tolerance, your income needs. You're being prudent, conservative, protecting what you've built. Then it happens. Your neighbor mentions over coffee that they made a killing in cryptocurrency. Your brother-in-law casually drops at Thanksgiving dinner that his tech stock portfolio tripled. Someone at the golf club hints at the returns they're getting from some new investment opportunity. Suddenly, your carefully constructed, appropriately defensive approach feels inadequate, even foolish. The hidden truth behind this comparison trap is that it becomes exponentially more dangerous after 60 because the consequences are permanent. When you're younger and you make an envious decision, Jumping into an investment because you're jealous of someone else's success. You might lose money, but you can recover. You have time, income, and runway. After 60, that single decision made out of envy, that moment of abandoning your plan because you couldn't stand watching others seemingly get rich while you played it safe, can derail everything you've built with no path back. What makes this especially tragic is the revelation that your neighbor's financial journey has precisely zero impact on your ability to meet your own retirement goals. Their crypto windfall doesn't make your dividend portfolio any less effective at generating the income you need. Their tech stock gains don't diminish your financial security, yet the psychological impact of comparison can override decades of rational planning in a moment of weakness. The journey from envious comparison to financial disaster is shorter than most people realize. The breakthrough comes when you internalize a simple truth. Financial independence isn't a competition. It's not about having the highest returns to brag about at dinner parties or the most impressive portfolio balance compared to your friends. It's about something far more personal and meaningful, having enough to support the life you actually want to live, with sufficient security to weather whatever storms the market throws at you. The impact of releasing yourself from this comparison game is profound, almost spiritual in nature. Behind the scenes of every peaceful, successful retirement I've witnessed is someone who stopped measuring themselves against others and started measuring themselves against their own needs and goals. This mental freedom transforms how you make decisions, how you evaluate opportunities, and most importantly, how you feel about your financial situation day to day. Now, I want to go even deeper into what happens when you free yourself from this toxic comparison mindset, because it opens the door to strategies that actually work for your unique situation rather than chasing what worked for someone else in completely different circumstances. If you've ever made a financial decision because you felt left behind watching others succeed, type "comparison trap" in the comments. When you finally break free from the comparison trap, something remarkable happens in your financial life that goes far beyond just making better investment decisions. You develop what I call financial sovereignty, the ability to make choices based entirely on your personal circumstances, your specific needs, your unique values, rather than reacting to external pressures or other people's success stories. This transformation is subtle at first, but its impact ripples through every aspect of how you think about money and retirement. The anxiety that used to accompany market movements starts to fade. You stop obsessively checking your portfolio balance every day because you're no longer competing against some imaginary benchmark or measuring yourself against what your friends are doing. Instead, you develop a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your strategy is aligned with your actual life, not someone else's highlight reel. The hidden truth here is that this mental shift often contributes more to your quality of life in retirement than an extra percentage point of return ever could. The journey toward financial sovereignty begins with asking completely different questions than the ones you've been conditioned to ask. Instead of wondering how your returns compare to the market or how your net worth stacks up against your peers, you start asking far more meaningful questions that actually matter to your day-to-day existence. Do I have enough income to support the lifestyle I genuinely want? Is my strategy protecting me against the scenarios that keep me up at night? Am I aligned with my actual values, or am I chasing returns just for the sake of bragging rights? This revelation completely changes how you evaluate financial success. Behind the scenes of every decision, you're now filtering through the lens of personal relevance rather than comparative performance. It's liberating in a way that's hard to describe until you experience it yourself. The constant noise from financial media becomes just that, noise that you can tune out because it's not speaking to your situation. Now, here's something fascinating that connects directly to the cash problem we've been discussing. Charlie Munger, whose wisdom I keep coming back to because it's proven so valuable over decades, once shared one of his biggest investment regrets. And it wasn't about a bad investment he made. It was about selling great businesses too soon. Think about the implications of that statement. When you discover a truly exceptional business, one with durable competitive advantages, strong management, consistent cash flow, a history of rewarding shareholders, the winning strategy is almost laughably simple. Just hold it. Don't overthink it. Don't try to time the market. Don't get cute trying to sell high and buy back lower. The impact of this wisdom on your cash allocation strategy is profound. Many retirees keep massive amounts of cash because they're waiting for the perfect moment to invest, or they're scared of committing to anything permanent. But quality income-producing assets, the boring businesses we talked about earlier that pay reliable dividends year after year, these aren't things you should be trading in and out of. They're foundations you build once and let work for you indefinitely. Now, I want to go even deeper into why holding quality assets transforms your relationship with cash, because the real problem isn't just that cash loses purchasing power to inflation. It's that holding excess cash represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what retirement wealth is supposed to do. If you've realized that your financial journey is uniquely yours and not a competition, type "my own path" in the comments. There's a behavioral pattern I've observed countless times that seems almost hardwired into human psychology. And it's absolutely devastating to long-term wealth, especially after 60. We consistently do the exact opposite of what would serve our financial interests. When we own an investment that's performing well, we get nervous about giving back those gains. So we sell too early to lock in the profit. Meanwhile, when something in our portfolio is losing money, we stubbornly hold on to it, convincing ourselves it will eventually recover and refusing to accept the loss. This paradox of human behavior, selling our winners and holding our losers, becomes increasingly costly as we age, because each mistake has less time to be corrected by future gains. The hidden truth behind this pattern is that it's driven by emotions rather than logic. Selling a winner feels good in the moment. You've made money, you've validated your decision, you can tell yourself you were smart enough to get out before it turned. But what you've actually done is cut off a stream of future returns from a quality asset that was doing exactly what you needed it to do. The impact of this decision compounds over years as you watch that stock you sold continue climbing while you're sitting on cash earning next to nothing. What I've discovered through decades of working with retirees is that the most successful ones develop what I call liberation through stillness. They identify quality businesses with strong, consistent dividends and durable competitive advantages. Companies that have been rewarding shareholders for decades, and then they simply hold them. No constant tinkering, no trying to time entries and exits, no obsessing over whether they should take profits or wait for more gains. Just patient ownership of assets that provide exactly what retirement demands. Growing income streams and relative stability without the anxiety of constant portfolio churning. This approach flies in the face of everything the financial industry wants you to do, because the industry profits from activity. Every time you buy or sell, someone collects a fee. Every time you move money around, there's friction and cost. But your interests are served by doing the opposite, finding quality and staying put. The transformation that happens when you embrace this philosophy is remarkable. You stop wasting mental energy on decisions that don't actually improve your situation, and you start benefiting from the most powerful force in investing, time working in your favor. Look, the financial establishment wants to keep you confused and dependent on their complex products. But here on this channel, we cut through that noise and have honest conversations about what actually works for retirees. If that resonates with you, subscribe now so you can access more of these straightforward discussions about wealth management after 60. No fluff, no sales pitches, just wisdom you can actually use to make better decisions with your money. The journey toward what some people call diamond hands, the patience to hold through volatility and uncertainty, often begins with experiencing seller's remorse. You sell something that felt risky or overvalued, only to watch it continue performing well for years after you exited. That pain of missing out on gains you would have captured if you'd just been patient enough to hold becomes a powerful teacher. Behind the scenes of every wealthy retiree who seems to have figured it out is usually a story or two of selling quality investments too soon and learning an expensive lesson about the power of simply staying the course. Now, I want to go even deeper into why this patience principle matters so much specifically for cash holders, because what you're doing by sitting in cash is essentially making the opposite bet, choosing guaranteed erosion over potential compounding. If you've experienced seller's remorse after parting with an investment that kept performing well, type "patience pays" in the comments. There's a fascinating phenomenon I've noticed throughout my career that reveals something crucial about who you should listen to when making financial decisions after 60. The day, louder and more confidently, someone proclaims their market predictions, the more likely they are to be catastrophically wrong. Think about all the pundits on financial television who speak with absolute certainty about where interest rates are heading, which sectors will outperform, or when the next recession will hit. The hidden truth that becomes clear when you study financial history is that the people who sounded most certain, who made the boldest predictions with the most conviction, were consistently the ones who lost the most money, both for themselves and for anyone unfortunate enough to follow their advice. This confidence paradox creates a dangerous trap, especially for retirees looking for guidance. We're naturally drawn to certainty because uncertainty feels uncomfortable and scary. When someone speaks with absolute conviction about what's going to happen, it's incredibly seductive. We want to believe that someone out there has figured it all out, that there's a clear path forward if we just follow the right expert. But the reality behind the scenes is that financial markets are too complex, too interconnected, too influenced by unpredictable human behavior for anyone to forecast with the kind of certainty these confident voices project. The revelation that transforms how you evaluate financial advice is understanding that genuine expertise doesn't sound like bombastic predictions. Real investment wisdom is characterized by nuanced understanding of probabilities and possibilities, by acknowledging what's unknown, by speaking in terms of scenarios rather than certainties. True experts sound tentative, measured, and qualified, exactly the opposite of what grabs attention on social media or gets clicks on financial websites. The impact of recognizing this distinction can protect you from following misguided certainty right into financial disaster. Now, this connects directly to another profound shift that needs to happen in how you think about wealth after 60, and it's a transformation that many successful professionals struggle with because it requires abandoning mental patterns they've reinforced throughout their entire careers. Most people spend decades trapped in what I call employee mindset. They optimize for promotions, prestigious titles, corner offices, and the respect that comes with climbing corporate hierarchies. There's nothing wrong with career success, but here's the brutal truth that becomes impossible to ignore in retirement. Titles don't compound. Ownership does. The journey from employee thinking to owner thinking represents one of the most powerful transformations possible in your financial life, and it's directly relevant to why holding cash after 60 is so problematic. Employees focus on salaries and bonuses, income that stops the moment they stop working. Owners focus on assets that generate cash flow regardless of whether they're actively working. An employee asks how they can climb the ladder and impress their boss. An owner asks whether this asset will generate reliable income 10 years from now when they're traveling or spending time with grandchildren. This mindset shift illuminates why keeping substantial wealth in cash fundamentally misunderstands what your money should be doing at this stage of life. Cash is an employee. It only works when you're actively managing it, moving it around, making decisions about it. Quality income-producing assets are owners. They work for you continuously, generating dividends and distributions whether you're paying attention or not. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this ownership mindset means in practical terms, because the transition from thinking like someone who earns money to thinking like someone who owns money-generating assets changes everything about your strategy. If you've realized that building ownership beats climbing ladders, type owner mindset in the comments. The fundamental question that separates owners from employees is deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful. Do you own anything that works for you when you're not working? Think about that for a moment. Real estate that generates rental income whether you're awake or asleep, dividend-paying stocks that deposit checks into your account while you're on vacation, business stakes or partnerships that produce cash flow even when you're golfing with friends or playing with grandchildren. These assets represent true financial independence because they've broken the direct link between your time and your income. The transformation that happens when you shift from holding cash to owning productive assets is profound. Cash just sits there, slowly losing purchasing power to inflation, requiring constant decisions about where to move it or what to do with it. But quality income-producing assets? They're working around the clock on your behalf. The impact of this difference compounds dramatically over a 10 or 20-year retirement. Behind the scenes of every retiree who seems financially comfortable without stress, you'll almost always find a portfolio of assets that generate reliable income streams, independent of any active effort. But here's where we need to talk about something that makes many people uncomfortable, a hidden truth about economic reality that shapes how we should think about risk and safety after 60. Charlie Munger, having lived through the Great Depression, internalized a wisdom that most modern investors never truly grasp because they haven't experienced it firsthand. Prosperity is not the default setting of economic life. The economy doesn't naturally trend upward in some guaranteed progression. Throughout history, it swings between periods of feast and famine, expansion and contraction, prosperity and hardship. This historical perspective completely changes how you should evaluate what's truly safe and what's actually risky. Many of today's retirees have lived primarily through America's unprecedented post-war expansion, arguably the greatest sustained period of wealth creation in human history. This limited window of experience creates what's called recency bias, the dangerous tendency to assume that your recent experience represents the normal state of affairs. The journey through decades of generally rising markets and economic growth can lull you into systematically underestimating the risks that have materialized repeatedly throughout longer stretches of history. The revelation here is that what feels safe, holding cash in banks, relying on the continuation of favorable economic conditions, may actually be riskier than you realize when you zoom out and look at the full picture. Economic disruptions, periods of high inflation, currency devaluations, these aren't aberrations that happen once in a lifetime. They're recurring features of economic history that your personal experience might not have included, but that remain very real possibilities. This is why the decision about what to do with cash after 60 isn't just about maximizing returns. It's about building a financial structure resilient enough to weather conditions that might be unlike anything you've personally experienced, but that history suggests will eventually arrive in some form. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this historical awareness should inform the specific choices you make about moving money out of cash and into productive assets. Because understanding the need for resilience is one thing, building it is another. If you've started thinking about economic cycles differently after considering your own limited experience window, type historical perspective in the comments. There's a phrase that might be the most powerful tool in your financial arsenal after 60, yet it's 3 words that successful people often struggle to say because they've spent their entire lives being rewarded for having answers. Those 3 words are simply, I don't know. The transformation that happens when you embrace intellectual honesty about the limits of your knowledge is remarkable. Successful investing after 60 isn't about being a know-it-all who has an opinion on every market trend, cryptocurrency, or complex financial instrument. It's about recognizing what you don't understand and having the discipline to avoid those areas entirely. This concept connects directly to what's called your circle of competence, the domains where you actually possess enough knowledge and experience to make sound judgments. By acknowledging the boundaries of your understanding, you naturally avoid betting on nonsense. You stop feeling pressured to have positions on things you don't genuinely comprehend. The impact of this intellectual honesty becomes your greatest strength after 60 because it keeps you from venturing into dangerous territory disguised as opportunity. I've watched this revelation save countless retirees from catastrophic mistakes. Someone approaches them with an investment opportunity in an industry they don't understand, using terminology they're not familiar with, promising returns that sound too good to be true. Instead of pretending to understand or feeling embarrassed to admit ignorance, they simply say, I don't know enough about this to make an intelligent decision, and they walk away. Behind the scenes, that admission of ignorance just protected their retirement more effectively than any sophisticated analysis could have. This philosophy of subtraction rather than addition brings us to perhaps the most distilled wisdom about wealth preservation that I've ever encountered. Charlie Munger, with his characteristic bluntness, reduced his entire success formula to 3 simple subtractions: avoiding debt, avoiding drama, and avoiding dumb people. The power in this framework lies in its emphasis on prevention rather than action, on what you don't do rather than what you do. Think about the implications for your cash allocation strategy. Avoiding debt means your assets are truly yours, unencumbered by obligations that could force you to sell at the worst possible times. When you move money from cash into income-producing assets without leverage, you're building a foundation that can't be shaken by margin calls or loan payments. Avoiding drama means choosing stable, boring investments that let you sleep at night, rather than exciting positions that keep you glued to market tickers. And avoiding dumb people, by which Munger meant those who are reckless, dishonest, or addicted to shortcuts, protects you from the social contagion of bad decision-making that inevitably affects your judgment. The journey toward financial security after 60 is far more about what you avoid than what you chase. This subtraction mindset completely inverts how most people think about wealth management, but it's the hidden strategy behind every successful retirement I've witnessed. Now, I want to go even deeper into the mathematics that make these principles so powerful, because when you understand the numbers behind patient defensive wealth management, the case for getting your money out of cash and into quality assets becomes undeniable. If you've learned that saying, I don't know, is actually a sign of wisdom rather than weakness, type honest limits in the comments. What strikes me most about conventional financial advice is how obsessively it focuses on action, which stocks to buy, which strategies to employ, which opportunities to seize. The entire industry is built around doing more, trading more, optimizing more. But Munger's approach inverts this completely, revealing a hidden truth that becomes exponentially more important after 60. What you don't do matters far more than what you do. The mistakes you avoid, the risky positions you never take, the complex instruments you refuse to touch. These decisions of omission often contribute more to your financial security than any brilliant investment you make. This perspective shift illuminates why moving money out of cash isn't about chasing spectacular returns or finding the next big opportunity. It's about avoiding the guaranteed erosion that comes from leaving wealth idle while simultaneously positioning yourself to capture reliable, steady growth. The mathematics here are so powerful that they transform everything once you truly understand them. A reliable 7% return, consistently achieved year after year and reinvested, doubles your money approximately every decade through the magic of compound growth. Think about what that means. With just 15 years of patience, your capital grows by nearly 3 times without requiring you to take extraordinary risks or make aggressive bets. The impact of this mathematical reality on your cash holdings is profound. Every year that money sits in a savings account, earning effectively nothing after inflation, you're not just missing out on growth. You're making an active decision to watch your purchasing power decline. Behind the scenes of every comfortable retirement is someone who understood that boring, consistent returns compound into life-changing wealth, while exciting, volatile returns often compound into anxiety and regret. The journey from cash to quality income-producing assets isn't about greed or risk-taking. It's about respecting the mathematics of time and compound growth. But here's where we need to address the elephant in the room: the fundamental arithmetic that governs all financial outcomes, regardless of how sophisticated your investment strategy becomes. If you don't spend less than you earn, no investment approach on earth can save you. This truth is so basic that people often overlook it while obsessing over asset allocation and market timing. I've witnessed this pattern countless times. People with 7-figure salaries who routinely end up broke in retirement because they consistently lived beyond their means, while modest earners with iron discipline retire in genuine comfort because they understood this simple equation. The transformation from spender to saver, from consumer to accumulator, represents the foundation upon which everything else is built. You can't invest what you don't save, and you can't save if you're spending everything you earn. The revelation here is that your biggest financial obstacle probably isn't lack of knowledge about which investments to choose. It's the daily behavioral discipline to live below your means consistently, even when everyone around you is upgrading their lifestyle and displaying their consumption on social media. This brings us to perhaps the most uncomfortable truth about achieving financial security after 60. The greatest obstacles aren't technical, they're psychological. The real battle isn't fought in the marketplace where stocks rise and fall. It's fought in the mirror every single day when you make decisions about spending, saving, and whether to stick with your plan or abandon it because something shinier caught your attention. Now, I want to go even deeper into how these psychological patterns specifically affect cash holders, because understanding why people cling to cash despite its limitations reveals the emotional barriers we need to overcome. If you've recognized that your financial challenges are more about behavior than knowledge, type mirror work in the comments. The principles we've explored today aren't complicated. They're actually quite simple when you strip away all the noise and complexity that the financial industry layers on top, moving your wealth out of cash after 60 and into quality income-producing assets, embracing boring over exciting, avoiding debt, drama, and bad influences, recognizing what you don't know, building a defensive strategy focused on preservation rather than spectacular gains. None of this requires an advanced degree or insider knowledge. But here's what it does require: the emotional resilience to implement these simple principles consistently, day after day, year after year, even when everyone around you seems to be doing something different. That's the real work. That's where the transformation happens. And honestly, that's why I created this channel, to have these conversations that cut through the mainstream financial noise and get to what actually matters for your financial security and peace of mind. If this conversation resonated with you, if you felt like someone finally explained retirement wealth management in a way that makes sense, without trying to sell you something complicated or unnecessary, I'd love to have you join this community. Hit that subscribe button so we can continue exploring these ideas together. There's so much more wisdom to uncover about protecting and deploying your wealth intelligently after 60. And if you made it all the way to the end here with me, I genuinely appreciate your time and attention. Drop a comment below saying, "Wealth is a mirror," so I know you stuck with this entire journey. It helps me understand what's truly valuable to you, and it lets me know we're building something meaningful here together. If you found value in what we discussed today, that like button is right there. It's a small gesture that makes a real difference in helping others discover these conversations when they need them most. There's a video right here that takes this foundation we've built and shows you the specific types of income-producing assets that make sense for different situations after 60. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep this momentum going and turn these insights into action you can actually take.